Okay. Okay, we got Dennis.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How's everybody?
Everybody fine?
I want to make sure that everybody can hear everybody. Can everybody hear everybody?
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Wonderful, wonderful.
All right. So we are just we're broadcasting now via Facebook. I just want to take a quick glance to make sure that that's being broadcast live, and then we'll go ahead. Yeah, I see it now. Hold on a second. Yes. Now. If you guys want to go and maybe start a watch party, folks can see the debate, you can go ahead and do that. We're going to go ahead and get started. I want to thank everyone for agreeing to be a part of this debate, this forum. Brownsville Civic Neighborhood Association. I'm Ken Kilpatrick, president of the association. We're so pleased that, again, you guys were able to take a minute out of your busy schedules and know that and you guys, again, are very busy. So thank you again. And I'll go right into Representative James Bush, who will give us a short invocation and he'll give some opening remarks, and then we'll introduce our moderator and move forward.
Let us pray. Our Father and our God, we thank you for this day, for this is the day that you have made, and we will rejoice and be exceedingly glad in it. We thank you tonight for this forum, candidates who have taken their took time out of their busy schedules to be with us tonight as residents of Brownsville. We pray for them now as they debate and discuss issues of our concern. Bless this effort in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Let me first say that how delighted I am tonight to join this forum and all of the candidates who have taken out their busy schedules, taking time out of their busy schedules to be with us tonight. We welcome you to our first forum and a series of forums we will be having at the Brownsville Neighborhood Association. We want to thank you for taking the time to respond to all of the questionnaires that we sent out, and we look forward to hearing from you tonight. So I'm not going to be long. I'll just skip a lot of the preliminaries because I want all of the time to go to you tonight, because we do have some major concerns for our community, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. With that being said, we want to thank our president, Mr. Kilpatrick, for his outstanding leadership here in the Brownsville area, and we're looking forward to working with you, and especially the winner of this debate. With that being said, Mr. President and our host, our guest tonight, Attorney Peabody, who's a great friend of mine that we go back almost, 35, 40 years?
It had to be
No,
shorter than that
I'm
time. I mean, we were just
our age.
high school, right?
It's an honor to have you tonight to host this for us and be able to ask a series of questions to our candidate. And with that being said, thank you so much, and let's get busy and get to work.
It is my pleasing honor to be here moderating this and seeing you all coming out and taking part of this as a civil responsibility. So this is how this is what the protocol is going to call for tonight. You each will be given 2 minutes to give an opening statement. Give us your name. Give us the reasons why you're running. And even more specifically, I want you to also give us what you believe to be the most pressing problem that's facing Brownsville, the Brownsville community, what you believe to be the pressing problem. After that, you're going to have 5 minutes to launch your platform per candidate. There are going to be questions that will be asked of you, some of them by me, some of them by people from the chat room. When all is said and done, you'll have 2 minutes to give your closing remarks. Now, with that said, Mr. President, are we ready to get started then?
Y'all ready?
Now, we would normally have gone in order, but Mr. Dennis, you would have been the first. I'm going to let the ladies go first. We'll do it that way tonight if it's all right with you.
Not a problem at all.
All right, then we're going to go with Monesta Lee Kinsler. If you could start, please.
Greetings, my name is Monesta Lee Kinsler. I am running for your Miami-Dade County Commissioner, District 3. I'm running because I'm tired of what I don't see in our community. I'm tired of everyone saying they for our community, they for the community, and really doing one thing in the front and doing something else back in the back. As a married woman, if my husband say he love me, but the bills are not paid, he just talking. I'm running because I want to see the change that we need to see in our community, and we need to set the captives free and keep us out of poverty. So that's why I'm running.
Thank you very much. With that said, we're going to go now to Ish McGee.
Hi, everyone. Good night. My name is Tissa McGee, and I'm running for Miami-Dade County Commissioner for District 3. I am a proud wife, a mother, a grandmother, and someone who believes in making a positive impact in the community. I have been a 16-year resident of Miami-Dade County, and in the last 6 years, resident of District 3. And I've been committed to investing into this community. When I moved here in 2004, there were 4 hurricanes back to back, and what I learned about Miami-Dade County and the residents and the community itself is that we are resilient, and we work together to get through, obstacles and challenges that happen. And I want to be the person that helps us to move this county forward. I believe I have a unique skill set as a professor at Barry University for the last 10 years, and someone who really, again, wants to impact some change in what our community has experienced. And finally, I actually am very humbled by the Chairwoman Audrey Edmondson's endorsement of our campaign, knowing that she believes in my ability to be a good county commissioner based on her history and her knowledge, her leadership. And so those are things that I believe in as a social worker. I come with those values, and that's why I am running to represent and be the voice for the people in District 3. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you would help me pronounce this, Gypsy.
It's actually pronounced Gypsy Metellus.
Okay, Gypsy Metellus.
No worries, no worries. I often hear. No worries. I often hear a number of pronunciations, and it's fine. So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Representative Bush, for the invocation. Thank you, Brownsville Civic Association, for this community table, for having set this community table, at which you've invited us to at least share with you our vision, our reasons, the reasons that propel us to seek this office, and the reasons the reasons that we feel that we are the best candidates to represent all of us in this district. So I've been in Miami 37 years now. I arrived here at age 23, and since then I've always lived in District 3. I've always been very active in various issues and causes throughout District 3. I am born in Haiti.
Ms. Metellus, I want to hear everything that you got to say. I got feedback coming in, and I'm going to ask if whoever's not speaking, if you would mute your microphone. Thank you so much. All right, I'm sorry. I want to hear everything that you say. Not you. You muted yourself. Did you mute yourself? I can't hear you.
Can you not hear me? Okay, all right. Maybe my microphone is acting up today. All right, let's try this again. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Excellent. Okay, so I'll start again. I'm Gypsy Metellus. I have lived in the District 3 for the past 37 years. I arrived in Miami at age 23 from New York, having graduated from college there. And of course, I'm born in Haiti, but grew up in the United States. And from day one, upon my arrival here, I have sought the various communities, the causes, the issues that were important to me, to which I could lend my voice, lend a hand, and help to move forward. And so it's in that light that as I look back at my 37 years, I spent about 10 years in education, serving at Miami Edison Senior High, and prior to that at Shenandoah Middle. Then I moved on to county government, where I served for about 5 years with then County Commissioner Barbara Carey Schuler. Subsequently, I went on to create and lead a nonprofit social service agency, SANTLA, Haitian Neighborhood Center, whose mission is to, again, help folks achieve success in this country, in particular, folks of immigrant origin who hail from Haiti. And so I believe that I am the person for this position, not only as a result of my experiences, my track record in this community, the relationships that I've forged over the years, I think, familiarity with the issues that impact all of our communities, not just issues that I've come to better understand or to develop a deeper understanding around based on my work in the community, but also because of my alliances, partnerships with various community organizations, various entities that are all about ensuring that we press forward together and that we create a better future for not just for residents of District 3, but also for residents of Miami-Dade County who are the ones who feel repressed, who are the ones who feel that they lack opportunity, who are the ones who don't necessarily feel that their voice matter, right? Who are the ones who are left behind time and again. That we're left behind historically, and if we're not careful, we're gonna continue to be left behind if we don't have the right leadership that believes in our potential, leadership that understands and respects our aspirations, and leadership that can get things moving for all of us in Miami-Dade County. And I'm that person. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dennis, thank you so much for your generosity and your hospitality. And the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Let me begin by prefacing Psalm 102, 107 and 2. It says that let the redeemed of the Lord say so, that whom he has redeemed from the hands of the enemy. I'm running as the Amendment 4 candidate for the District 3 seat because of what I see in the district. Not since the days of Arthur Till, Barbara Carey, and Miller Dawkins has this district seen such strong leadership. This district encompasses the city of Miami District 5 as well as the county District 3. It has become fodder for the news cycles that the highest crime rate is basically located in Miami-Dade County District 3. When we look at the poverty rate and the unemployment rate, it's all about District 3. But District 3 is the one county district that receives millions and millions of dollars, but yet still look like May 18th, 1980. I feel that I'm the best person that's running for this seat because I've been in this community my entire life. I was born in Liberty Square on 13th Avenue and 63rd Street. I went to Orchard Villa, Charles Drew, and Miami Northwestern. I've seen this community in its heyday, from what it was to where it is now. I've seen Little Haiti grow and now beginning to disappear because of the Magic City project. So when we're talking about economic growth and economic development when it comes to our people, there is a problem. When we're talking about gentrification, we can't say that it's a white commissioner or a Cuban commissioner doing it, because those two seats are held by black folks. So our own people are gentrifying our community because they have no vision. In my closing statement, I want to say this here. Proverbs 29:18 says that where there's no vision, the people perish. There hasn't been a vision in this seat from the District 3 seat in such a long time that our people and our community is perishing. So I believe that I am the best candidate for this seat. The first name on the ballot, punch 332. You don't have to pick your poison because I'm the cure.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dennis. And I saw something, Mr. President, that another candidate may have come in, I'm not sure. No? Okay, so then what we're gonna do now, each of you will have 5 minutes on your candidate platform to present your platform to the people. And if you don't mind, we'll go in the order that we went in when we started. So Ms. Kinsler, I believe you have the floor now, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. My agenda for Miami-Dade County District 3 is 1, exposure. 2, to make sure gentrification is not constantly perpetuated in our community. 3, economic development. We don't need jobs. We need jobs that are paying, that's substantial, that's actually helping our people and investing in our people. And number 4, if we raise the quality of life, we won't have all these issues we have in our district, which is poverty, which is mental health. Because if I don't have a place to stay, I don't have a job, I don't have enough income, how am I supposed to function okay? I've told police in the city of Miami, if you don't take a bath, you're gonna smell. If you don't have a place to lay your head, you're gonna be frustrated. There's too many programs in our community, especially in District 3, that make money on keeping you in the same dilapidated state. And who's making these policies? And who's allowing them in our community? And who's allowing people to keep buying up property in our neighborhoods that are only interested in investment purposes only? You can't go, you call a realtor. You call a realtor, they're not gonna come because you're from the neighborhood and you live here. But they will sell it to people who come in with the highest bid. They're developing, and while they're developing, they're pushing people out. Something is wrong. And if the people who've been in position or affiliated with these people been in this position all these years, how you gonna change anything if you ain't changed nothing in all these years since I was a baby? So we need change, and we need somebody innocent, and we need somebody who's not politically connected to the people so we could care about the people and not about profit.
Thank you, Ms. Kinsler. And that then takes us now over to.
I'm sorry, there is a message in the chat from, I think Mr. Hardiman is in the.
Keon is trying to get in.
Yes.
Could we pause just for a second? I can try and get him in the room. I'm trying to.
Yes, sir, Mr. President.
Thank you. Just give me 1 second.
We're almost there. There you are. Microphone.
I made the party.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
I'm glad to be here.
Welcome to the party. So what we're going to do, Mr. Hardiman, is this. Since you were late.
I know. I was watching from the very beginning. I couldn't get in, so I heard everything. I see where you guys are.
All right. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to a 5-minute platform. When it comes to your time, what I'm going to do is give you 7 minutes so that you can introduce yourself and go straight into your platform. Okay? That's how we'll work that. All right. So now we're going to go to Ms. Ish McGee.
Thank you so much. One quick thing. So I thought your question was, what was the top priority, or do you want the entire platform?
Well, I like your platform. That question was for your introduction, but if you would weave that in, that would be great.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I really believe that what we're challenged with in Miami-Dade County, I'm going to work within 3 pillars. So the first being accountability and accessibility. My background really is in evaluation and capacity development for organizations. So I want to make sure that, the caveat is that I'm coming with a social work lens, but also thinking about these 3 pillars as I talk about the platform. So first being accountability, accessibility, second being collective action. This job of county commissioner is not a singular job. It is us working together as a community. So I believe collectively we can make the best decisions, make the right moves for the entire community. And thirdly is around this idea of transformational change. So if we want to have transformational change, we're going to have out-of-the-box thinking. So in terms of things, when I talk about my platform, I try to connect it to what I know already and what I think we can do in order to sufficiently address those issues. So I think that there is a interrelated and systemic issues in Miami-Dade County. And I looked at all of the things that you presented in your profile for the Brownsville Civic Neighborhood Association, and basically really found that there are some similarities in some of the issues that you brought forward. And the first being, again, that this is some systemic issues that need to be addressed. Secondly is the fact that we have disparities here in Miami-Dade County that we know are part of the issue, and we do have to address those. And I think finally, just the idea of overall economic development for this community is going to be what really moves it forward. So my plan overall is to look at the interrelatedness of 3 activities, because we know it is very costly to live in Miami. And so we have to look at economic development through business development. We have to look at housing and making sure that we have opportunities for families within our communities. Brownsville has a strong generational family atmosphere, and what we want to do is continue to make stronger communities there. And then finally, looking at the idea and issue around transportation and how people are able to move around District 3 in Miami-Dade County is going to be important, because that's also part of what the Brownsville community wants to bring is being more of a transportation hub. And we'll talk more about that, I think, when we talk about further economic development. But that's my platform. Those are the things that I really believe we will need to do in order to move Miami-Dade County forward.
Thank you very much. With that said, Ms. Gypsy Metellus.
Thank you so much. And so I've got 6 core priorities with, of course, some driving principles, right? And so let's go through the priorities really quickly and briefly. They're priorities that everyone can accept, everyone can welcome, and everyone can agree with. We're talking community safety, but in terms of safety, we want to look at ways to improve policing, right? We want to look at ways to ensure that there is community policing as a fundamental value. We want to be sure that there are prevention programs that lead to these safe neighborhoods and communities that we all want to create, right? So safety is one. The second point would be prosperity, right? And prosperity, not just for our business, our small business community, right? Which happen to make up more than 80% of our businesses here in Miami-Dade County, but prosperity through enhanced or extended opportunities for contracting, opportunities to participate in this $9 billion enterprise, opportunities for businesses to grow, to thrive, and of course, opportunities for other people, in particular from our communities, our Black communities, to engage in business activities, to have an opportunity to create their own business infrastructure, if you will, and to have all of the tools and skills that they require in order to be successful. And now on the personal and family side, I think we need to really prioritize figuring out ways to help families prosper, to make sure that working families in particular can get a leg up in this economy and can also thrive. So third point is sustainability. Now, of course, let me just say that the priorities that I am outlining are not being related to all of you in any order of priority, right? Just so we understand that. And so back to sustainability. And that's really around a very existential issue for our community, if not our country, right? We understand that Miami-Dade's geography, our topography, really places us at risk for not just sea level rise and the impacts, but also for climate change. And so we've got to, again, follow the science and do what needs to be done to mitigate the negative consequences of what is surely a trajectory that not only nature is pushing forward, but through man-made actions is accelerating, right? So sustainability is around climate policies to protect our environment, to care for our region, and to be sure that we invest in our aging infrastructure, right? So fourth priority is affordability. Affordability, you know that is the crisis of Miami-Dade. It's the crisis of many communities in the country. And we know that because it's a crisis in so many other jurisdictions, we know that if solutions are believed in, they can be found. And so we've got to have an all of the above kind of approach around affordability, not just making sure that there are options, there are rental options, but there are homeownership options, and there are also all sorts and all sizes of units that can accommodate the various needs, the specific needs in certain communities, from the elderly to people who need additional support and housing because of the challenges that they're emerging from, right? So again, making sure that our vulnerable populations are a central component of any affordability plan. Fourth, livability. And of course, you hear people talk about this, and that's about the health infrastructure in our community.
1 minute left. You
One
got
more
1
minute. So livability and mobility. Mobility is all about transportation and transportation options and making sure that residents in our county, and in particular in District 3, can move across the district and across the county to get to jobs, to get home, to get to places of commerce, and as well as places of leisure. And so the livability is all about green spaces, park spaces, health infrastructure, making sure that our communities' safety and health are protected through a solid infrastructure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Dennis?
Yes, what I would be is a socio-economic commissioner, and here's why. The Honorable Malcolm X said, where there's high crime, there's high unemployment. So economic development will be the key. When you understand the economic development that takes place within District 3, District 3 still has high crime in it. Why is that? One of the reasons why there's high crime in District 3 because the residents are not taken seriously by the leadership. When crime is going on and being derelict inside the community, leadership doesn't have a vision to stop it because the leadership has not put forth the effort to move it forward. Everybody looks at economic development as construction. When the construction project goes up, it is basically a temporary job. Once the project is up, the work is gone. So we have to be able to create jobs and create people that could be sustainable in life. When we're talking about housing, the only place that all this economic development is taking place is within District 3, within the Overtown area, the Liberty City, Model City. Again, we're not the problem when it comes to housing, but it's our housing that we are being priced out of. When the county or the city of Miami or whoever wants to do development, our communities are the communities that's gentrified. When we're talking about sea level rise, Model City, Brownsville does not flood. I want to say that again. Model City and Liberty City does not flood. So what happened with the crime and the sea level rise that's going on in Miami Beach? You allow the crime and everything to take place so that the property values become lower. You bring in outside investors to then come in to gallop up the community and then price the community out of them. There's nothing affordable about affordable housing. When we look at the transportation issue, transportation is a key because again, if the buses are not running on time, then there's a problem with that person that has to get to work and they're being put out of work. The transit tax back in 2001, the penny tax was supposed to be an extension for Miami-Dade County to take the Metro Rail line from 79th Street all to the County Line Road. It never happened. Even we have new buses and things that came from that, it never happened. And now we still have a derelict transportation system. When I say transportation, I'm also talking about the Metro drivers, the bus drivers, because now these bus drivers are just like the correction officers. They're put at risk. So now we're talking about transportation. We're talking about crime. And all of these things go hand in hand and they're encompassed inside of District 3. Key point that I want to go back to, and that's the sea level rise. The highest points of land is in Brownsville. The highest points of land is in Model City. The infrastructure is already there. So what's happening in Brownsville and Model City and District 3 and Overtown and Little Haiti? They are pushing our people out. They're also moving the businesses out. So now we have to go outside of our community to spend our money instead of creating business infrastructure and businesses inside our community to sustain our community. Anytime that you have to leave your community to go to work, there is a failure in what has taken place. Since May 1980, and $116 million, in which $70.6 million was supposed to come to Liberty City, we still look like May 18, 1980. In my closing statement,
You have 1 minute too, Mr. Dennis.
we're talking about bringing our young people home, and our millennials are coming home. Just remember, it's our millennials that are being, our millennial young males that are being killed and put in caskets and put in the ground and being cremated. So we have to take responsibility to uplift our community. As a leadership and as the Commissioner of District 2, that's exactly what I'm gonna do. Punch 332 for Brian Dennis as your next Miami-Dade County Commissioner.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Hardiman, you will have 7 minutes because of the 2 minute to introduce yourself. And in that introduction, I wanted you to say, what is the most pressing problem that you see faces the Brownsville area? And then you'll have 5 minutes to present your platform.
First, I'd like to say thank you for the invitation to being here. It means a lot to me to be able to speak to the Brownsville community. And I want to first go by introducing myself. I am Keon Hardiman. I was born and raised right here in Miami, Florida. I currently serve as the City of Miami Commissioner. For the first 2 years of my tenure, I was the Vice Chairman of the Miami City Commission. And then I went on to serve for an additional 4 years as the Chairman of the Miami City Commission. And I graduated from Miami Northwestern Senior High School, Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University, with my bachelor's and master's in business administration. I came back home to work for a Fortune 500 company, but ended up going back to school and enrolling in law school at the University of Miami. School of Law. I graduated early, and when I was asked by my Dean of Law, who should I call? I asked him to call the public defender. And so I became an assistant public defender at the Miami-Dade Public Defender's Office, where I had the privilege of serving our community in misdemeanor, juvenile, and also in felony courts. And so since the time I've been a commissioner, because I ended up running for commissioner just after that, I've actually got married. So I have 2 beautiful children now. One daughter who's going on 4 years old, another one who's 4 months. And so I've been in this community for a very long time, and I intend on staying here. And I think one of the biggest issues that we have in the Brownsville community is community beautification. And so, you know, when I think about what's going on in our community, I think about these pillars that I intend on having an impact on in the Brownsville area. The first part is economic development. The second is community beautification. And the third is wealth creation. And so when we're talking about economic development, I'm talking about investment in housing, and not just rental housing, home ownership. And it's important that you all understand that when I say investment in home ownership, it's not just for new people that move into the area, but it's also for people who already live there. And so it's about time that people who pay their taxes in the Brownsville area have an opportunity to apply for grants from the county government so they can make improvements on their homes, to make their homes storm resistant. Because it's unfair to allow the new development of rental housing, and they live and they have high impact windows and they have HVAC systems, and they're living with the modern amenities and protections of new age construction. But those of us who've been in the community for 30, 40, 50 years, who've owned businesses, et cetera, have not had the opportunity to have those same sorts of improvements. That's not right, and we can do something about that. I want to expand upon our cultural tourism in the area. Brownsville has a rich history, and it has many assets that people can actually come and visit. But it's up to our government to make that a destination for people to come and see. When you have an area like Brownsville that hasn't been invested in by quite some time from government has a responsibility of improving those spaces. And so, you know, we shouldn't have eyesores like the graveyard. The government should play a task, a role, really, greatly in making sure that's an area that we can feel proud of. And I have a plan for addressing that. The economic development shouldn't just be for developers, but it should also be for people who live and who work and who have existing businesses there. So I want to see Miami-Dade County also invest in the commercial infrastructure there. It's interesting because when you drive through 46th Street, you kind of can drive through Brownsville and you don't stop, but it's so much more to see. There's neighborhoods that are south of 46 and north of 46 that all they need is an opportunity to really and truly have some more investment commercially for the people who live there to be able to enjoy that space. And so that means that you can have more restaurants. You can have more places where you can have coffee and read a newspaper. You can have places where you can have a glass of wine and shop for a nice dress. I mean, these are all things that are very well possible in an area that's so well connected to the rest of Miami-Dade County. Community beautification. We need to invest in our neighborhoods. 1 pickup, 2 pickups a year for bulk waste is not enough, especially in an area that's troubled with a lot of illegal dumping. It's just not fair. We should be having at least weekly pickups in places like Brownsville. We should be investing in our parks in places like Brownsville. We should have world-class spaces in communities like Brownsville. I mean, that's the respect that a community like Brownsville is due. And you see that in other areas that I've served in my community where we've had millions of dollars invested in places like Hadley Park, in places like in Little Haiti, et cetera, in Overtown.
One second, Mr. Harper. Right in there. I'm going to ask that if you are not speaking, that you put your microphones on mute, because this is very important. We want to be able to hear everybody and hear what everybody has to say. All right, stop right there. I stopped your time. You have minutes and 35 seconds.
And so we should have that sort of investment in our communities because it's the responsibility of government to enhance our communities. What good is a government that doesn't choose to invest in beautification of your area? What good is a government that doesn't assist you in making your community a better place to live? You know, what good is a government that isn't going to play a role in actually making your community something that you want to live, work, and play in? Government should do more than want to push you out. They should want to keep you there. And the last thing is wealth creation. And so you do that through business creation. You do that through actual development that partners with the community. So if the Miami-Dade County owns parcels of land that's next to your next to your land, they should partner with you and not some developer from out of town in developing your community. Why can't you be a part of the ownership stake of what's happening actually in your area? And we've done this in Overtown. We've done this in parts of our community where it all makes sense. And what you walk away with is communities where those who live, who work, and their families who've been there for a very long time now have a meaningful stake in their community, and they want to pass those assets down to their family. And the last thing that I'll mention about it is just training for jobs, and also jobs for children and families. There's nobody who lives in Brownsville and Liberty City and Little Haiti and these troubled areas where kids are unemployed and they find themselves in trouble. Not one of those children should be without a job. And Miami-Dade County has a $9 billion budget, and they should dedicate part of their budget to ensuring that every child has an opportunity to work and gain and have meaningful employment and have the training necessary so that they can become productive citizens in our community instead of juvenile delinquents.
1 minute.
And so, and that's 1 minute up. And those are the real true pillars of why I'm running for this seat. And I believe that I'm most qualified to have this seat because I put a significant amount of time and resources into investing into making my neighborhoods a better place to live, work, and play. And it's obvious that I'm the youngest candidate here, and I don't say that in jest. I say that just to say that I have the long-term vision for this community to show you how it is that I want to live in my community, and I believe that people who are like me and and those who are older than me want to live in their community. I think that in the very near future, everyone's going to be very proud of a place called Brownsville and all the enhancements that we've had and how far we've come. And I want to be the commissioner that makes that change.
Thank you. And at this time now, there are some questions that is going to be posed to all of you. And, you know, if you wave your hand, or I will call upon you to answer those questions. But ultimately, we want all of you to answer them. The first one, zip code 33142 has suffered many things. In times past, it was the HIV rate. Miami was like the epicenter for it in Florida. 33142 was it for Miami-Dade County. Today is COVID-19, and COVID-19 is devastating Miami-Dade County right now. But Brownsville and the zip code 33142 have been identified as areas where the disease is surging, this virus is surging at a higher rate. Question is, what do you believe to be the underlying conditions that expose this community to such high rates of infection? And what is your plan to mitigate this in the future, not just for COVID-19, but for any other thing that may come about? Okay. I see you trying to get in there, Ms. Kisler,
Ms. Jones, might I add to you, I've been in business for years. I've been in business since 2008 with a nonprofit that works with HIV. My business actually just did an event, the 9th annual National HIV Testing Event on the 26th of June, which is June 27th. It's a national event. I'm here because I am tired of what I hear everyone say they do for our community. Brownsville, Liberty City, Overtown, Little Haiti. I'm tired of hearing it as a business owner, as an activist, an HIV activist, which many of the people who are engaging right now have seen me for years giving out condoms in the middle of the streets. And the reason why I had to give out condoms in the middle of the street, because I believed in taking it to the community. Number two, that was a way for me to economically fund my organization that has been registered since 2014 for the state of Florida. And me out here engaging with the people, I end up meeting a lot of people who are HIV positive, but yet I've had these people, many of the people in our community that's supposed to represent our community have drove by, passed you right by, locked their doors, rolled their windows up. They never inquired. I didn't even know what a commissioner was. I didn't even know what a state rep was when I first started out here. That's what gave me the boldness to speak truth to power, because I realized you don't care about the community, because you would have never said either I'm HIV positive or I'm homeless. You'd have never understood. You would have said why is she out here? And inquisitive mind, since you care about community, would have been like, well, why is she out here handing out condoms every day? So
Well, I'm gonna stop you right there, Ms. Kinsler, because the question is very specific as to COVID-19. And what I want to know from you is, what is your plan now?
It's back to testing. We did COVID-19 and we did HIV testing. It's the same thing. You have to go to the people. We're not going to be concerned about our health, especially if we're trying to worry about keeping a roof over our head. So yes, you have all these clinics and all these resources that's available, but many people not going to do it. You got to come out this office and take it to the people, take it to the neighborhood. And that would be my plan, to extend an outreach where you go out to the people, not wait for the people to come to you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And Ms. McGee, I see you anxious to get in there. So I'm going to go to you next. What do you think about that?
Thank you. I'm very concerned. I believe all Brownsville residents and all District 3 residents have a right to have a safe environment and a healthy household and a place that they can grow up in healthy. And that includes COVID-19. And what I believe that COVID-19 really exposed for us is and highlighted the fact that these disparities have been continuing to grow in Miami-Dade County. Health disparities, and the things I think that are causing and have a direct impact are related to trauma and related to healthcare access and the ability of our residents to be able to get ongoing preventative treatment. So it's something that, we have to, I think this highlights the fact that the type of leadership that you want in that county seat has to be someone who is cognizant of what the issues are, and that they are actually going to fight for those things like access to healthcare. I think about COVID testing is happening at the Caleb Center. We definitely want to continue that, but we want to make sure that residents have the ability to get those test results back quickly, that they have the information that they need in order to stay healthy and not get sicker as a result of this. And then we've got to also give them mental health care. I think that's an issue that's often left off the table. When we talk about health and human services specifically, we know that this is causing a high amounts of stress, and people are feeling very impacted by all of the things that they have to deal with lack of jobs and lack of the actual access to the healthcare. So this is something that we need to address as county commissioner. I would definitely do that. And I also thought about the idea around fresh fruit and food availability in the Brownsville and Liberty City area. And we need to do more about that. In my work with the Miami Children's Initiative, I was actually part of the group that helped to make sure that we had a food co-op every week, so that residents in the Annie Coleman PSU could actually get those fresh fruits and vegetables. And then they actually started their own garden right there in the community, which I think is another excellent idea. Again, transformational change is going to take out of the box thinking.
Thank you so much. And Ms. Metellus?
Thank you very much. So the question is specific to Brownsville, but the response, I think, includes the Black communities throughout this county, right? So the narrative is the same, the disparities are the same, the systemic issues are the same, the health issues are the same. Right? I'm talking about the chronic conditions, they're the same throughout the community. So same narrative, same statistics, same challenges, right? So that's one thing we have to establish. Second thing, the root causes are also the same, right? We're talking about racism, environmental, social, health, economic, and every other category. We know that all of our communities are impacted by this, right? And so these issues are connected to all of us in these ways, right? And so if we're going to address COVID, which is the immediate emergency, we recognize that we've got to look at how we engage all of the health infrastructure from Jackson and its clinics, the federally qualified health clinics throughout the district, right? Making sure that they're engaging with us and providing testing and providing preventive care, but also in looking at baseline data such that we can understand what is happening in our communities, because potentially what we do in response to COVID could offer a model for how we then tackle the chronic conditions that all of us feel. All Black people, no matter where you're from, we're facing the same chronic conditions, from hypertension to diabetes to heart disease, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think along with data, I think there's got to be special attention paid to mental wellness, because in our communities, we put up with so much. We define ourselves as very resilient, when in fact we're not taking care of ourselves in the ways that we should, because sometimes we don't have the luxury to do so, right? So we keep powering through, we press through in spite of the conditions that ail us. And so, you know, we've got to really concentrate on building this blueprint that would...
I'm going to let you get your last point in, and then I'm going to go to the next person, okay?
So what's critical here is this blueprint that we, from lessons learned as a result of our response to COVID, and figuring out the ways that we can address the more than 48% uninsured in our communities. More than 48% of our people are uninsured. And so that is not a set of circumstances that would promise prosperity, that would promise that we would have good quality of life, or that we would survive. And so this is an existential threat to our very existence as a community and as a people.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Dennis, I see you anxious to get in there. So do you need me to ask that question again? Or you ready for me?
No, I know what it is because I researched it.
All right, there you go. You got the floor.
And I'm speaking as Ms. Metellus was speaking, and I was very inclusive in the African diaspora. There's racism in healthcare. All tests are not created equal. It is just, it's the same thing happening in the Black community where we always come up with the highest number of tests. When it comes to COVID-19, the one thing that we have to realize is our community work in industries to where we have to get out and go to work. Brownsville borders Hialeah. Hialeah is the hot spot in the state of Florida. Liberty City borders Hialeah. So a lot of people go west across the tracks to do shopping and things like that of that nature, and then they bring it back. So that is one of the reasons that's one of the reasons why our community is being affected by it. The one thing that I would tell my community if I was the commissioner, listen, I can't tell you not to go to work, but I can tell you that if you don't have your health, you do not exist. There has to be, and there are rental subsidies and things that are in place. When FP&L and people like that decided that they was going to hold off and not charge people their light bill, the commission and the county government should have been in place with a subsidy program that when FP&L decided to cut those lights off, that they were in place to pay those bills because people had not worked. The one thing that LP&L did is that when they came back out when they came back in progress, they sent those bills out. So one of the first things that I would do as a researcher, understanding this, and I wrote it in one of my columns in the Word on the Street, the COVID-19 is the same thing as the Spanish flu. The same requirements, social distancing, age group, young adults, all of these people are the young people that caught it and bringing it back. So my solution would say to them, listen, stay home. Even if you got to go to work, come back home. Avoid mass gatherings. But I would have never agreed to open up the county or open up my district or the country so that it can flourish. The information was given that June and July, the COVID-19 rates would spike to the roof. It would have been emphasis, not just testing, and more testing.
Thank you, Mr. Dennis. Mr. Hardiman, I see you ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. Thank you so very much. I think part of the reason that we have such a devastating effect of COVID-19 is our pre-existing conditions. So when you think about our community of Black people, and it's not just our zip code, what we have is a higher incidence of diabetes. We have a higher incidences of cardiovascular disease, hypertension. We also have generally poor diet and access to healthy foods. So when you think about these things, I mean, all of these things put us in a condition that makes disease makes us susceptible to diseases in our body. And so when you think about that, then you couple it with their exposure to the virus through at-risk jobs. They may be great jobs, but they put you at risk. So for instance, if I'm a bus driver, great job, great benefits, but it puts me at risk because I'm in contact with so many people. And so when you're in contact with when you're in service jobs, for the most part, in certain communities, when you are in jobs where they consider to be essential, you work in grocery stores, or you work in restaurants, where you have to serve many people, those jobs put you at odds with getting the disease and having a negative impact on it, having a negative impact on you. But then I also must say that the condition of our housing is also a part of it. You have to understand that many of us who live who are of color in these areas don't live in standard housing conditions. And so what that means is that you have mold many times in your bathrooms. You don't have properly ventilated homes. We don't typically, like I grew up in the inner city. How many times can I say that? I mean, we open our windows and let the natural air flow through. And so we have conditions that we're living in that are substandard, and they're not what we would like for anyone to live in. And then you combine that with the diseases that we have, and these sorts of ills will come into our community and affect us at a greater rate. Especially when I grew up, how we grew up. You can imagine my grandmother gave birth to 15 kids. They were sleeping in what we call head to foot. And so there was no social distancing. There was no ability for you to actually find a space to get over a cold. It just did not exist. And so what happens is when one gets it, all 15 get it. When all 15 get it, they spread it to other people. And so when your mom has to go to work when she's sick, it's a problem for our community. And that's basically what's going on during this time. We had to make a choice, whether or not we were going to risk being sick or whether or not we were going to stay home and risk being evicted. And that's not a good choice for us to make. And so as a commissioner, I would ensure that we give additional dollars towards getting people out of that bind. So what we did in the city of Miami was we provided dollars for business grants for people to continue their businesses and grants for people to pay their mortgages and their rents so they would not be evicted. And so I will continue doing things like that and then offer kids and young adults in our community jobs. And so we did that as well by letting the households with children in them, let those kids get jobs at $10 an hour, which is above minimum wage, and work in our communities, in our restaurants and such, so that they still can bring some revenue back into their family. And so if you have 4 kids in your household, you may be out of work, but at least you still are bringing enough income in your family to make ends meet.
Okay, I appreciate that. From the questions that we're going to go with from this point on, your answer is going to be limited to 1 minute. If you need additional time, it'll be considered based on what you think. Okay, I'm going to play a role now of I'm going to put on a different hat on this one. However, we want to hear what you got to say, but timing wise, I need to limit you. So we're going to be limited to 1 minute on this one. And this one segues into something that you said, Mr. Hardeman, and about housing, affordable housing. The county's inventory of vacant lots are often surplus to builders who build single-family homes without local workforce. The other problem is that these homes are made unavailable to Black families who live in the community. In other words, not only is the work outsourced, but the living is outsourced as well. What is your plan to help ensure that local employment and home purchase priority is offered to Black families in the community to help ease the sting of harmful impacts of gentrification? And I'm gonna call on, for this one, Ms. Metellus, could you tell us your views on that, please?
So our communities, our Black communities, Black and brown communities, have faced what we would define as concentrated and persistent poverty, right? So if we're going to make a dent in repairing the harms, historic and otherwise, that we have been subjected to, we have to make a case for equity, right? The case for equity implies making the case for this housing that you're talking about. My understanding was that the county was not to convey vacant lands to for-profit entities. If those rules have changed, this is news to me. But it seems to me that the priority should be to convey land to builders or developers who are going to promise in writing, if need be, and in covenant, that their housing is going to be targeted to the local community, given the historic wrongs that these communities have faced, right? Everything from redlining to being pushed out of their homes through various mechanisms.
You off now. We're limited to 1 minute. Thank you so much for that. And
I
Ms.
just started. I just got started.
We're limited to 1 minute. We'll come back. We'll trace back.
Okay.
Ms. McGee, if you would tell me, please.
Yes, absolutely. These issues are definitely require a more extensive expansion of these answers. But in thinking about the empty lots and how we can make sure that we are encouraging both the use of our local talent, and two, making sure those families that are in our community are the ones that are accessing the resources. It's really important. I think I mentioned before that generations of families are living in Brownsville. We want to continue to keep that. I would say having to develop an MOU between the county and the community benefits, sort of making sure that we are ensuring and keeping to task those developers and people that we are giving those land opportunities to make sure that they meet the requirements. I was actually a board member of MDEET, and what I found there was that, you know, we want people to definitely apply for the subsidies, but they can't because there are not enough homes that are within the price range for them to be able to apply. So those are things that I would make sure as county commissioner to analyze, change, and make sure the procurement system is changed as well.
Thank you. And Ms. Kinsler?
We have to stop selling out the community to investment properties. There's 30% wealth gap in the people that usually, from us to the people who buying property. And nobody don't want to spend all their money. They making very good money. They could be making 6 figures and more. It's a disparity gap with the wealth. But they're buying the properties in the inner city and they're looking for investment purposes. And we're allowing that. And that's got to stop, because you want to sell me a house for $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 from a neighborhood I'm from, where I live, and I just need to survive. I'm not chasing the American dream. That's a scheme. We need living. Why you think there's so many homeless people? We can't afford the cost of living because they have taken our neighborhood, District 3, to make it where it's more about investment. It's not about the people. It has become more profit. So we need rules. We need to screen these investors. We need to screen what people are, why they're purchasing property and they're not from the neighborhood. What's your interest? How are you going to add to our community? Not keep subtracting and pushing us out.
Thank you. And Mr. Dennis?
One of the first things I'm going to do is go into low-income housing. There are a lot of people in low-income housing that are paying rent like mortgages. They are paying rent like mortgages. So what I would do is target those individuals, put them under the self-sufficiency program, get them to qualify for the subsidy. What I also would do is not allow the builders, if I'm giving you free land, you cannot build a house that prices the individual out. So what I would do is I would target an individual family or individual families that have a certain cap that can pay the mortgage and the insurance, but also be able to still live and have the developer to build that house at a reasonable and affordable price.
Looks like a screen froze. Just give it a second. She's on. Okay, guys, give 1 second. We'll continue in just 1 second.
Bits of technology.
There's a lot of lightning in my area. So that's why I keep looking to the left. I'm like, okay, there's lightning going on.
Let me go ahead and resume the questioning. So still on affordable housing until our moderator returns.
I think I haven't had the opportunity to respond just yet.
Who's that? Oh, Keon. Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry. My apologies.
No problem. Thank you so very much. I'm glad for the question, and this actually touches on all three of my different prongs that I spoke about earlier, which are economic development, community beautification, and wealth creation. And so the first thing is this: in areas like Brownsville, we had housing that was available for people that was public housing or low-income housing. And what the county has decided to do was remove all of those residents out of their housing. They raised the entire, so leveled all of the property that was there. And now they intend on building these mega complexes of rental housing for that space. And that's just not right. A lot of those people have lived for their entire lives in their housing. Miami-Dade County could have done what they should have done, which was create housing that's available for those people to live there and own their homes. Instead of building 1,500 units of rental in a community that's a majority, like that's meant for home ownership, you should have built housing that was available for home ownership for the people that live there. And then invited other people who lived in the area, their children, their grandchildren, to buy homes in that space. And so that's what I would do to create that wealth in the community with Miami-Dade County's assets.
Thank you. And we're going to go ahead. We go around the room. Everybody answered that question on affordable housing. The next question that we have is dealing with community benefits. So community benefits are an essential tool in developer-community relations, whereas a developer will commit to pre-negotiated specified benefits to the community in exchange for community support for the project. Will you mandate community benefit agreements for all county-funded multifamily projects that are built within this community, including those projects constructed on private property? And we'll start with Ms. McGee.
I think I mentioned that in my last answer that I believe it's important that we hold the developers and those people that we are working with that are getting county funding to the fire, to making sure that they don't take advantage of the communities. I think too often than not that we are being responsible for things that the developer is doing and then not having the proper access or ways to hold them accountable. And for me, I think, again, accountability being one of the pillars that I want to work with is making sure that we have measurable outcomes and things that we will make sure that when we are enforcing those community, what we need for the community. So that's really important. And those actions are very, the benefit agreements are very valuable if we keep the developer to the word.
All right, thank you. Ms. Kinsler?
All we have to do, Mr. Kilpatrick, is say what we mean and mean what we say. Stick to what we already been saying for hundreds of years. When it comes to housing, when it comes to transportation, when it comes to economical development, District 3 is the cash cow, but the money don't never stay here. It goes somewhere else. So why is it that it changes in the middle of the play? We need to keep what we're saying to help build and revital. Don't have a business here. Don't have developers here if it's not going to help the people who already here, who already exist here, who already from here. Come on now, we need to make some type of agreement and keep to it. Not get attracted to what it looked like on the outside, but now once you bind that contract, it's too late and they're going to do what they want to do and they're here.
Ms. Metellus.
I mentioned earlier that as a community, we need to make the case for equity, right? And we need to be sure that we win on equity for our communities, right? So we have seen examples, historic examples throughout the country of the tools, the strategies that work, and guaranteeing that community benefits are targeted, that community benefits really address the specific population that's impacted, right? And so we have to stick to our guns and those terms. We've got to make sure that developers, anyone who wants an opportunity, wants a, for lack of a better word, a favor from the county, a relaxation of certain rules and guidelines, then there's got to be a price to be paid for that. And that price can be in terms of community benefits that ought to be targeted, that ought to address the community impacted. And again, this is about making the case for equity for our communities.
Thank you. Mr. Dennis.
Yes, I would agree to the community benefits with the development, but there has to be enforcement. There have to be enforcement, and they have to be in the contract. But there also has to be monitorization. If you don't monitor it, the developer could do what he wants to do and say what he wants to say. But also with that, I would also impose financial fines. Not the fine that the developer would just say, oh, I can pay this and still do what I want to do. No, I'm going to levy something that if you are affecting my district that bad, that it will cost you just as much as what that development is costing you to build. So there has to be monitoring, there has to be enforcement out there on the premise at every development so that we can make sure that our community is not being played, but being paid.
Thank you, Mr. Dennis. Mr. Haldeman.
I like that one, Dennis. Of course, I agree to that. And community benefits has been something I've been long championing in the city of Miami. When the first thing I think about is in a community like Little Haiti, there was a deal where we were able to come to a deal of about $31 million that's going to be going towards the Haitian community for housing and economic development. They were initially just trying to offer a simple rental housing for the people that were moving to the area. And so we demanded more. We want the money to be put to existing homes and existing businesses. Another example is $6 million from Moist Manor to the Overtown community. I mean, that was a deal where Moist Manor was also looking for certain benefits from the community, and he had to pay for it. And so when I think about the Miami World Center deal, there was responsible wages for the people that work there, local jobs, and ownership. I mean, it's important that we have ownership over our spaces. And so when you think about a place like Overtown, where we've had developers come in and we've given them some subsidy in order to build things, we made them partner with churches in the community where the churches now have ownership of that product. And so if they sell it, then they're going to get a part of the profit. And another good example of it is Wynwood Norte. That's something that's going on in Wynwood right now, where they were giving them $1 million to be able to put towards people's homes in Wynwood.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and move to the next set of questions. Thank you very much for your answers. Our next category is economic development. And so as our neighborhoods continue to experience change, which some would call gentrification, the opportunities for builders, general contractors to construct mixed-use multifamily commercial structures continue to increase. However, in similar fashion to housing construction, there's little to no participation from the local workforce, and essentially no general contractor opportunities being afforded to Black contractors. Will you commit to initiating a mentorship for Black-owned general contractors for all county-funded projects built on both public and private property. I'll start again with you, Mr. Hardeman, and we'll go back to the other.
I think we could do more than commit to mentorship. I think the proper term we should use is partnership. I mean, all partnerships aren't created equal. I know my wife gives much more to my family than what I'm able to give, and it's a good partnership for me. It doesn't mean that I give that what I give isn't worth anything. It means that what she manages to provide for my family means a whole lot more to me than it may mean to anyone else. And so with that, I mean that Black businesses that are small, that are trying to get a real foot in the door in Miami-Dade County should have an opportunity to partner with larger businesses so they can learn and so they can grow. And we also have to choose those Black partnerships that make sense, not ones that just want to take a payment in order to get out of the way. And so it's important that if we have Black partners, that these are partners that are willing to learn, willing to grow, and they're willing to give opportunities to other businesses that look just like theirs, and young people and older people that look just like them, so that they can make an impact on their community.
Thank you. Denise, Ms. Kensler, please.
There are engineers here in District 3. There are carpenters and people who have construction, but when they get the opportunity to bid, the application is so thick, the criteria are so thick, it's like a process of elimination to eliminate you from the process. So I want to be able to remove some of these barriers they have to keep us, because it's amazing. I just was driving in Overtown today. Every time I drive by there, I get very upset. Then I take pictures of the people that's working on these projects. The same with here in our district, right off of 95 at night when they doing their construction, it never be us. It always be someone else, but yet they use the term urban very pervasively and very vague to do what they're gonna do. But they never ever keep their word. So we need to make sure we make better decisions when it comes to contractors from within to help our growing economic development here in District 3, not outsource the work.
All right, thank you. Ms. Metellus.
Again, yes to internships, yes to mentorship, yes to apprenticeships, but we've got to say yes to equity stakeholders, equity stake owners, yes to opportunities expanded to community residents, to area residents in a very targeted way. And I will, tonight, my word is equity, because we're not going to win if equity is not central to the arguments we make, to the case we make, and to the demands that we make.
Thank you. Ms. McGee.
I believe this goes back to systemic issues within county processes. And I definitely will support mentorships and looking at partnering with our local colleges and universities to make sure that vocational options are available as well to our youth, and so that they have the skill level to be able to apply for these positions, depending on what it is that they want to do or accomplish. But I think that the procurement process within the county needs to be something that we take a very deep look into, and making sure that, again, that there's opportunities, and then we build the capacity of those organizations to be able to apply, to get through the bidding process, to make sure that they understand what it is and the variables needed in order to be successful businesses in Miami-Dade County. And we can do that. We can provide education and capacity building assistance.
Thank you. Mr. Dennis.
Yes, I would agree to creating mentorships, but also I would also go to the pastors and bring them in on it, because it's their money that they're leveraging in the churches on Sundays that these developers are building on. Also, when we're talking about the community in that state, one of the things that I did as the president of Brothers of the Same Man was the county created a community workforce program that it will ensure that the people of District 3 get if not get all of it, get the majority of the work. But we also have to have Black firms involved in this process. There cannot be no exclusion without inclusion. So we have to be to the table at all times. So I would create a board of contractors, black contractors that understand these contractors, and I would have them sitting at the table to make sure that everything in the process is done right, and we are also included in the deal.
Thank you, Mr. Dennis. I want to give the floor back to our moderator at this time, Ms. Peabody Laverty. And Ms. Peabody Laverty, we are at point of economic development. We're the last question dealing with county employees.
Okay, I thank you so much. And modern technology is all I can tell you about that one right there. But thank goodness that we're back. So we're now into economic development, and it was the last question that you were on.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. I just want to do a follow-up question on that one as far as the mentorship. What would you do to ensure that our youth, our children that are coming up now, know about ownership? Not just the employment part of it, but ownership, business ownership. And what plan do you have to ensure that this is what they're going to be able to do, that they'll have ownership and that they can invest in stock markets and they can have sustainable wealth going forward? And I'll start that question because I see some heads nodding all over the place. Glad to see you too. All right, Ms. Kinsler, I'm gonna start back with you.
That's no problem. That's the thing I've been stressing the whole time, pretty much, as far as all of my campaign. I'm a teacher. I see the young and the youth and the entrepreneurship. And
With all due respect, Ms. Kinsler, because I don't want to get caught off again, I want you to answer that question that I've asked you, and I'm going to hold you to it. What would you do?
We need to grab them at the stage they are and develop their talent.
How would you do it?
Well, as an executive producer, you'll put them in the gift that they're in. We're in too much soil. We're using too much soil that we're not able to be fertilized. If you notice this is the type of gift that this child has, you need to pair them up with somebody who's they're gonna edify it, not exploit it.
So you want to pair them with mentors?
Yes, you got to pair them with people. It don't even have to be mentors. It got to be people who care about them and make sure that they fly. Not try to keep eating off of them and keeping them stagnant and they never go anywhere but stuck on someone's job or someone's entity.
Thank you. Ms. Metellus, what would you do?
You know, the old saying is that children learn what they live, right? And so in order to reverse this trend where our children don't see themselves as the owners, these children need to be provided with mentorships. I heard somebody said that. They need to have opportunities to shadow people.
So what would you do? I'm going to hold your feet to the fire.
So create these opportunities. Create those opportunities for owners.
How would you create those opportunities?
You work with the school district. You work with institutions, community institutions that have these kinds of programs to say that you want to see an increase in these kinds of programs to result in opportunities for these kids to develop their talents, to grow their aspirations, to in fact understand that they too can become owners. So until they see it and experience it, they can't aspire to it. And that's a fundamental challenge in our communities. Our children are overwhelmingly not exposed to these opportunities. So we've got to create them.
Thank you. Ms. McGee?
I would definitely, as a county commissioner, support programs that do financial literacy and they work with kids in actually giving them opportunities to experience using those skills and not just talking about them. I'm an educator as well. I think it's important that they learn the skills, but they actually have the opportunity to practice and do that. And so, bank accounts, thinking about things that kids have the opportunities to learn how to invest money or actually even try to do that through some type of programming. I think that's something that the county commissioner would definitely want to support, and I would do that as a county commissioner.
Thank you. And Mr. Hardiman, and I'm coming back to you, Mr. Dennis, I haven't forgotten you. Mr. Hardiman, how would you do that?
I would invest in programs that are providing that sort of education. I would also do it myself though. So I would have a radio show that talked about financial literacy and why you should invest in your community and what products you can have. I would talk about economic development in our communities and why children should have a role in coming back to their communities and actually and owning homes and being able to invest in those
So
types
how
of.
would you then, Mr. Hardiman, how would you then make sure that our children are prepared for ownership? How are you going to go about doing it?
You make it about. You talk.
I cut you off because of our time. I need you to break this down. And
I'm going to follow the rules, and I'll be within a minute. I promise you that. But the first thing you do is you have to have the conversation about it. You have to start it with one, educating the parents, and then educating the children as well, to ensure that they are knowledgeable about what ownership means. And so, like in places that I've already represented, I talk a lot about ownership, home ownership, business ownership. Ownership of your person in your place. All those things matter when you want to make decisions and you want to be economically stable in our communities.
All right, Mr. Dennis.
One of the things that I would do is pair them with mentors to find out if you want to be in ownership. Not everybody's an owner.
Hardiman,
But I would
mute your microphone for me. Thank you. All right, Mr. Dennis, go ahead.
pair them with mentors. I put them in class and pair them with mentors and find out if they want to be business ownership, have business ownership. I will put them with somebody with a small business that like landscaping or just business period, that will give them the opportunity not just to be a worker, but to be a sure fire ownership. We'll put them with a Terry Elliott, a Rasul Malik, a Terry Wright, a Anthony Scott, a Terry Jones, people that you know have had nothing, but now they are successful because someone gave them an opportunity to become a successful entrepreneur and business owner. I'm going to put them in the front of the examples to say, hey, if they did it, you can do it. Now the ball is in your court.
All right. This question is to the general panel. Model City Urban Center District is the zoning overlay that implements the people's vision as illustrated in the model city, Brownsville, Charette, over the years. The zoning overlay has experienced several changes that threaten to ruin the uniformity and quality standard that was established by the people in 2003. Will you commit to creating a strict standard that maintains neighborhood integrity by prohibiting high multifamily structures in the interior of our neighborhoods?
Yeah.
Mr. Dennis, you started out on that one. Your microphone is still open.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Please, sir.
It's no brainer when you have the Mr. Stewarts and the Miss Claudette Freeman and the Barbara Carries that champion that stuff, the octateers that push that stuff. You have to go back to the drawing board and make sure that it works. What we can't allow to happen is that people get on the board and stagnate the board. And if we can stop that, then the community won't suffer. So you have to go back and see what the elders have done that made that program successful and move it forward. It's a no-brainer that it's what should be done. I totally agree with that. Yeah, that's a yes for me all day.
And Ms. Metellus, I know that you had your mic open next. So would you answer that question, please, ma'am?
Very briefly, and so for me, driving principles are participation or engagement, accountability, and transparency, right? And so if Brownsville wants to see this overlay protected, if Brownsville wants to take charge of its destiny and its future and has some very specific ideas around what those protections should be, around what those enhancements should be, what those embellishments should be, and what should not happen, I would encourage Brownsville that I would be the champion for the community, but I need them to always remain sustainably civically engaged, because this is the kind of thing that you lose really quickly when only a few people begin to show up and continue to advocate for it. And if there aren't the numbers that are there, then my voice or my power is diminished in terms of making something happen for you.
Ms. Kinsler?
We have to include diversity from all aspects, not just power-wise, position-wise, related-wise, but community-wise. There are people who I know who have property within these areas, within District 3, and the zoning has been changed to devalue their lots, to devalue their property. And when you're talking about coming in restructuring and home ownership, but then they're changing the zoning so that you'll lose the value. So we have to have people who gonna have the best interest for the community involved in these projects, not just the people who profiting off of it.
Mr. Hardiman.
Yes, I would maintain the existing overlay. I think it's important that we preserve historic communities and also make them better. So don't leave them back in the 1950s and the 60s, but make them better. And so this is exactly the opposite of what's happening today. Right now, you're finding that there are developments that are coming that are on the horizon where they are increasing the density in these areas, where you're building these multi-story buildings that are out of character and scale with the neighborhood of homeowners. And so that's uncalled for. And there are other examples in Miami-Dade County where there are developments that are slated to be built in other districts. And the neighborhood around it has restricted them, not only in the number of units, but also in the type of housing. So they can't build multi-story buildings. They can only build single-family homes. Even though they're allowed to build 1,500, they're only building 500. And that's the type of leadership that I want to be able to provide to District 3.
And Ms. McGee, I'm going to give you an opportunity to answer that as well. Thank you, Mr. Hardiman.
Thank you. I definitely would continue that. I think that I value, as a social worker, I'm coming in with these values, and I value the voice of the Brownsville residents who participated in the charrette. I know it was some time ago, but it actually developed a plan that they already have, and I think that that's important that we hold that plan up and say this is something that residents participated in. We can use this data and information in order to show what is it that we want to have happen in this community. The values around meaningful urban spaces, around urban design, and how to attract businesses and families back to the area is something that I think were the utmost important things that people identified. So definitely we want to keep the zoning where it is so that we can continue to go forward with the plan that the people want.
Thank you so much. And this question, I'm going to start with, I'll start with you, Mr. Hardiman. Will you commit to prohibiting exorbitant building heights and units to the acre except as it relates to pre-established inclusionary zoning, bonuses and or relocation of public housing units located in the interior of our neighborhoods?
I was born and raised in the James E. Scott housing projects. And I realized how damaging it can be to have a high density public housing facility in the middle of a community of homeowners. And so I believe that housing should be low scale. I believe that housing should be available to everyone, but it should not be something that is damaging to the community. And so I give my full support behind protecting communities like Brownsville from high density, high scale, large buildings that are really perverting their neighborhood and making them more transit oriented instead of communities where people can live, people who can enjoy their spaces and have a sense of ownership in their space.
Thank you. Mr. Dennis?
Yes.
Thank you.
The Black community is the only community that happens so frequent to where we are building high rises in the middle of neighborhoods of single family homes. We have to stop that. And one of the reasons why I really agree with that, because who wants someone looking down in their property? It's not a good look. So yes, I will commit to building heights at a certain degree. That's it. I mean, at a certain level, that's it. No ifs and buts about it.
Thank you. Ms. Metellus?
First and foremost, I want what Brownsville wants, right? And so on the one hand, it is about protecting your assets, protecting your interests, protecting the history of the community, right? And so if it's going to be established as an historic community where we're preserving the legacy of the neighborhood's founders, the contributions of the neighborhood's founders, and so the neighborhood has to retain that character, that initial character. And so if Brownsville wants to maintain that, that's what I would support.
Thank you so much. Ms. McGee?
I am going to support and fight for what Brownsville community members and residents want. I believe in, I would commit to the zoning heights based on the fact that this is what the community wants. As I mentioned before, it's important that the community has their voice heard and that they are able to participate in this process of county. I'm not going to be a county commissioner that works alone. We are going to work collectively on making sure that the community is safe, that it retains its historic nature, that it is a community where families are going to be able to thrive.
Thank you. And Ms. Kinsler?
We have to do what's best for the community. If that's what the community want, that's what we got. But we have to also be open to change and open to growth. But we can't just be open to growth and it's other folk who profiting on it. I think a lot of the complaints about the growth is not so much about the height of it. I think it's about who's enjoying these views. So we need to be open for change because we have different people, different children, different generations. And at the same time, we do need to protect what our seniors know of and familiar with. But at the same time, we have to protect what the community says, not what developers and the builders say.
Thank you so much. And Ms. Metellus, will you commit to strengthening the Model City Urban Center District Ordinance to repeal high density permissions that may generally apply to all other urban center districts?
I would commit.
Okay,
Yes,
I can't.
Yes, I will commit to that.
Okay. Ms. McGee?
Yes, I have no problem saying that that committing to that, making sure that, again, I think that we are all on the same page about the fact that I'm on the same page about all of these commitments to zoning and again, ensuring that the community's voice is heard.
Thank you. Mr. Dennis?
Without question, totally committed.
Thank you. Mr. Hardiman?
I need you to repeat the question. I don't want to agree with something that I didn't
All
hear.
right, no problem. I'm so happy that you asked me to do that. Will you commit to strengthening the Model City Urban Center District Ordinance to repeal high density permission that may generally apply to all other urban center districts?
Absolutely. I think that each neighborhood is different and how the density applies to your neighborhood depends on where your neighborhood is and proximity to other levels of density. So I would respect Brownsville's area.
Thank you. Ms. Kinsler?
Yes, ma'am, I would respect it. But again, we have to know that although we're dealing with urban issues that's applicable to all the neighborhoods, we still have to be mindful that each neighborhood has their own set of issues and they have their own set of developments. So,
Okay. Thank you. Now, we're going into another area of questioning. So I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm saying with this one. The Brownsville community is subject to a county ordinance that collects a portion of its taxes, which customarily would inure to a trust fund for a community redevelopment agency, CRA. This particular ordinance has assigned this tax increment to SMOD corridors, transportation expansion, and development in areas where there is either planned new metro rail construction or new bus rapid transit options. Because Brownsville experiences blight and slum, the community believes that its tax increments should be eligible for use as a CRA fund, as permitted by Florida Statute Chapter 163. What is your plan to establish a reparative compensation fund for Brownsville residents and stakeholders now that this tax increment has been reassigned?
we have to have inclusion of everyone. We got to make sure we do some changing when the board, don't let them get too comfortable with who's on the board so that you don't make decisions just repetitively or the decisions for who's in your crew, but for the community. So we have to make sure we be able to accept that, but we also have to be able to open to change, because if we get too comfortable, we keep making the same repetitive decisions for the same people instead of for the community and the new needs of our community.
Ms. McGee?
So what I want to say is that representation is important on any activity like this, so that we would actually need to have representation from the Brownsville community to make sure that they have the voice within the decision making that happens. The other thing that's going to be vital to making sure if they want to create a CRA is making sure we have those private partnerships that are going to help to bring the funds and the dollars to the table to make sure that that happens when the taxing happens. You have to have that that ability to bring the private partnerships there too.
Thank you. And Ms. Matilis?
So I would most definitely commit to supporting an engaged Brownsville community that's really dedicated to addressing this issue and emerging with the result that they want to see. And so this support for sustained engagement also means making sure that community residents understand the stakes, understand the landscape, understand the challenges, understand the implications, and understand what it is they need to do to ensure that they win on this issue, right? Because remember, Brownsville, you know, Liberty City, Overtown, Little Haiti, we all have this history.
I'm gonna cut you off, but I thank you for that.
History of broken promises that we've got to figure out how to now work for our favor.
Thank you. Mr. Dennis?
Yeah, I would definitely commit to that. But one of the things that I also do is that look at what the CRAs have done in the city of Miami. But I also go back to the Arthur Till blueprint of creating a trust as well that will ensure that whatever's happening in Brownsville, that the people of Brownsville have an opportunity not just to have a say-so, but have the opportunity to be the decision makers in what's affecting their community. So I totally would commit to, I totally would reestablish it, grab those funds back and put it back where it rightfully belongs. That's in the Brownsville neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Dennis. Mr. Hardiman?
Miami-Dade County is no friend to CRAs in our community. I do not see Miami-Dade County creating any new CRAs whatsoever. So what I would do is I would actually go into the Smart Corridor legislation and make an amendment there because it already exists. What I would make an amendment to is along the Smart Corridor, if you have communities that have been depressed because of lack of investment, we would allow those communities to have access to that dollars. So those dollars can be used to improve streets, those dollars can be used to improve infrastructure and made in an investment in the homesteaded properties of that area. If you make that sort of argument, what you'll find is that all along the corridor in Black communities all the way down south, you'll see that you have buy-in from them in the voting base in order to make a change that can be effective for a place like Brownsville.
Thank you so much. Now,
I'm sorry, can I add a follow-up to that though? It is, as I remember reading, Brownsville is not eligible for the TIF, or can somebody clarify that for me? Because I thought that's what I understood, that they weren't eligible for those funds. That's the reason why they wanted to make a CRA.
Right, which is why, may I respond?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Which is precise, they're not eligible for the dollars, which is why precisely why we're going to the legislation that created the smart corridors that exempted them from being able to get those dollars and create an exception for communities just like Brownsville to be able to have those dollars to invest in their community.
And Mr. President, I did see you on. Did you want to add something to that?
I think it was clarified in the end that the TIF dollars were reassigned, and those dollars are being spent and assigned outside of our community. So it's very important for us. We can't have a CRA. There's slum, there's blight, there's dollars available, but we don't have access to it. So in terms of having leadership who now would look at our community and say, how do we bring those dollars back to the table? And how do we give the community a voice and how those dollars are spent?
Thank you for that. The Model City CAC and the administrating board before it has been in the Brownsville neighborhood since the inception of Model Cities programs of the late 1960s. Recently, Chairman Edmondson essentially dissolved the CAC, allegedly for cause, thus silencing the CAC from providing recommendations regarding the use of federal HUD dollars in our neighborhoods. Further, the Model City CAC has operated in dysfunction for the past decade due to its lack of Brownsville residents, which make up the bulk of the NRSA boundaries. Will you support and work with the Brownsville Community Neighborhood Association towards the creation of a fully funded Brownsville NRCA Revitalization Trust that could compensate for the lack of representation from the Model City CAC, as well as potentially administer a tax increment, prepare to fund, own and develop property, fund area-specific safety programs, as well as other uses to address slum and blight throughout Brownsville? And how would you do it? And I see you, Mr. Hardiman.
Yes, I would, because number one,
in the back of your mind.
I lived in Brownsville. I never knew this even exists. And at the time I lived there, I think I had a temp agency. To know that you have the resources, it needs to be more applicable. It need to be more spread towards our people, and we do need to support that so we can help the people in the community of Brownsville.
Thank you. Mr. Hardiman?
When a plant is dying, you give it water. When a car is in bad shape, you service it. So when an organization like this is troubled, you don't dissolve it. What you do is you invest into it. You give it all the resources that the county has, and that's what I would do to ensure that the organization comes to the level that it needs to be in order to be successful in our community. Just because we're behind, just because we haven't had the investment from the county, because we haven't had the support of lawyers and those who are in economic development and an encouragement to make a better organization, doesn't mean that you dissolve that organization and move forward. So what I would do is the same thing I did to the Liberty City Trust. I empowered them by providing funding so that the people who worked as an organization for Liberty City Trust had constant employment and they could work on behalf of the people. I gave them grants so they could use to invest in other businesses that were in the community. I gave them the ability to have grants so they can actually give to the students and so they could work on behalf of the Liberty City Trust. So I gave them purpose. You know, all you have to do is believe in your community, and you will be surprised how much it will grow. And so that's what I would do as the next District 3 Commissioner.
Thank you. Mr. Dennis, will you support the Active Brownsville Historic District survey with the necessary legislation and funding necessary to preserve the historicness of our people and the places of Brownsville?
Yes, I would. That's a totally, go back to the other question. That Model City board was dissolved because of a personal beef between the commissioner, Roy Hardiman, and Dr. May Christian. That shouldn't have never happened. That shouldn't have never ever happened, and the commissioner had the power to stop that, and she didn't do it. So she ran around and blamed Roy and Dr. Chris for it all when she had the power to stop it. But to go back to answer the question that you just asked, yes, I would do it. Yes, I would support the necessary legislation. Yes, I would sit back there and create it. Brownsville is the unincorporated area of Miami-Dade County. That area is supposed to get everything that the county is supposed to give to it because it's not a municipality. So the leadership has to take hold of what is there, what is on the books, and to make it happen with people in the community of Brownsville. Yes, I'll support that.
Okay. Mr. Dennis, this question is to you. What do you believe to be some of the historic places of Brownsville?
Ooh. One of the first thing, well, I'm gonna go to one thing everybody's talking about. It's that graveyard. That graveyard is one of the most historic places in Brownsville because of who's buried out there. But there's also a problem with the graveyard because part of that graveyard, only part of the graveyard is designated as a graveyard. The other part is designated to where the way that the legislation is moving forward, that the county could probably come in and start exhuming bodies from out of that graveyard and putting, making affordable housing high rises on it. So when you look at Brownsville, when you look at the Sawyer House, when you look at all those things that encompass the history of Brownsville, the hotel, I'm trying to think, I can't call it off the top of my head because it's so much history in Brownsville. It's
Okay,
so much history in Brownsville.
Mr. Dennis, and you said the graveyard, and I've heard that twice, once from you, once from Mr. Hardeman, but there are two graveyards in Brownsville. There are two. This community that is so small, you know, it's ironic that this community that is so small houses two graveyards. Now, I'm going to leave that there because I want to ask this question also, and I see you, Ms. Metellus, shaking your head. What do you think are some of those historic, and you can't say the graveyard because that's all you're going to answer.
Right. So there is Hampton House, you know, with the storied past, with the storied past. But you know, we have an opportunity, maybe a last opportunity, to ensure that a Black community, a Black neighborhood, built and founded by hardworking people who just wanted nothing more than a piece of territory, a piece of land that they could call their own. If today we have an opportunity to ensure that it's one, designated an historic district, we should do that. If we have an opportunity to create the enhancements and the supports to make it a place where folks could be interested in visiting, we should do that. This is, again, an opportunity to win on equity for all of the other broken promises, for all of the suffering that Black populations in Miami-Dade County have suffered, from the destruction of Overtown to the menace that's pending on Little Haiti and potentially Liberty City, right? So if Brownsville stands ready and has all of the tools, all of the characteristics to be preserved and to be registered as an historic neighborhood, I think that that's how we began to work on preserving it.
Thank you. And Ms. McGee, the historic Hampton House has just been named as one of the historic sites of Brownsville. So,
Georgette's Tea Room, that's another historic site there in Brownsville community. And
my question though,
Okay.
question. Okay, I'm gonna ask my question. Thank you for that. I appreciate you knowing your history on it. I appreciate that though. So with the historic Hampton House, would you support the expansion of this historic Hampton House to include implementation of a fully functioning kitchen? And what do you think about the idea that it does not have a fully functioning kitchen to enable food and banquet operations to take place at that facility?
Well, that's a disservice, because I know that the history of the Hampton House, that was a place where people met to share a meal and to gather together as a community. So I would definitely support that. I think it would be a valuable way to bring people back into and using that property. I had my first Links meeting there. Just recently went there for a Together for Children board meeting. So I know the importance of it being used, that the life that's there is important. So I would definitely support that.
And Ms. Kinsler, how do you feel about that?
We have to support it because, as I think when I hear you mention the Hampton House, that's where my grandma and my mom and them used to go. It's like Overtown, that these are the places that when you hear the seniors talk, that's the places they refer to because they knew what it meant to them, where they seen their first concerts, first Sammy Davis. So we have to preserve it. And I really think that we could do better when it comes to helping that develop that.
Thank you.
And also remember, back in the days, it wasn't until the 50s and the 60s that Black people started moving in Brownsville. And now it's not even that anymore. The history already it's just dissolving, and the elderlies are so affected by it mentally.
So thank you so much for that, Ms. Kinsler. And Mr. Dennis, I want to go back to you because you talked about Lincoln Memorial being a historic site because of who was buried there. And you didn't name it, but I fully believe that that's the cemetery that you were referring to. So my question, sir, is this. What is your plan to restore and sustain the historic Lincoln Memorial Cemetery in Brownsville?
One of the first thing I would do is sit down with the stakeholders and the ownership.
Who are the stakeholders? Who are the stakeholders?
The stakeholders are the people of Brownsville. And one of the stakeholders, I would definitely bring the Brownsville Neighborhood Civic Association to the table. You have to have the stakeholders in there. Then I would bring the stakeholders and the owner in at the same time to talk about a plan that not only to upkeep it, but to keep it where it's not being used in a way that's derogatory to the heroes that are laid out there. Right now, there's all type of things going on out there. And so when you look at what's taking place, that is why the graveyard is in the position that it's in. The way that Ms. Johnson had it, and the way that it was Mr. Kelsey Farr wanted that graveyard to be, is not where it is and where it should be when we're talking about historic figures. If we look at the City of Miami graveyard, where there's Black historic figures out there, it is well kept, it is well groomed. So that would be the priority, to find an organization to either upkeep it or have the county take it over and keep it as a tourist site.
Ms. Hardeman, are you pushing your button to answer? I look like you were pushing your button right there.
Yeah, I did. I hope you, Madam Moderator, I just asked for a bit of leeway. I promise you I'm laying the foundation for a response.
All right, then. I'll give you that leeway, Counselor.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's what y'all do.
So in Miami, we've done this, right? We've invested in so many different historical properties that the area has had some elevation. So those look like the Lyric Theater, the Hampton House, the Lyric Theater, the Ward Rooming House, the Dorsey Library, the Black Police Precinct. And it's ironic to me that the only investment that we've really seen in this area would be the Hampton House. And then the investment was not made in order for the community to actually have some real economic development. So who owns the property? And what is the property being used for, right? So of course I would encourage it not only to have the ability to have a full kitchen, but it should also have a full liquor license. I mean, this should be a place where people can come and have fun every day, not just on the weekend that certain groups rent it out for a civic engagement. And so I would do that. And it's interesting, when we talk about George's Tea Room, I was just there yesterday. It's a beautiful structure that's obviously been up for a very long time, but the county has not invested any dollars in rehabilitating that property either. There are properties just near it that are in just as bad condition as that one. And so why should our communities be that way? And so I would ensure that properties that are historic get that sort of investment so that we can preserve it for whatever we choose it to be. But the first thing we need to do is make it safe.
Thank you so much for that. And I asked a question to Ms. Kinsler, Ms. McGee, and Ms. Metellus. Do you want to add anything to that? What has been said on that question? I'll go on to the next question.
I think it's an excellent opportunity to create jobs, especially in this time. And for people who have already been living in this neighborhood and they know the history of it, it would be a great way to compensate, not volunteer, give them employment. You want to create jobs, that place there is an excellent location to create job opportunities.
Thank you.
Now we just add,
I'm sorry.
Add just one quick observation. That this conversation around Brownsville and the lack of investment there just points to the lack of collaboration between city and county. Right? If we're going to turn this around, this has to be a fundamental element of a new day. There's got to be collaboration. There's got to be unity of vision. There's got to be unity of commitment around making sure that this investment is made in ways that are very strategic to protect Brownsville and then to build upon those protections to an historic preservation.
Thank you. Public safety. There's been a lot in the media surrounding police officers and what happens with them. Mr. Dennis, if you could just turn your microphone down until you get ready to speak, I would appreciate it. There's been a lot of that going on, particularly in light of Black Lives Matter and what is happening to our men and our women in our community. Nobody is exempt. None of us are. So what is your plan to hire more qualified African-American police officers to the Miami-Dade Police Department, that area that will be policed by the Miami-Dade Police? What is your plan? I'll start with you, Ms. McGee.
Thank you. I was trying to get to my mic in time. I think there's some valuable things that we can do as a member of the board, the Black Affairs Advisory Board. Every year, annually, we held a job fair to make sure that there were opportunities, held it at Florida Memorial University, to make sure there were opportunities for our community to apply to to law enforcement positions. I believe we need to have more community policing, making sure that there are members of people who look like us on the police force that are actually participating in and understand the traumas in our communities, understand what our community members are going through.
So, Ms. McGee, how would you go about doing that? Sorry for cutting you off, but I really want you to get to that point.
Absolutely. Training and development is also a very important part of that piece. But yes, ensuring that the law enforcement agencies are actually hiring and keeping and building the capacity of our community officers and making sure that they, again, are trained on how to deal and work in our community specifically.
And Ms. Kinsler, thank you so much, Ms. McGee. Ms. Kinsler, how would you?
We have relationships in the community already. We just need to enforce and have the community not just respect the uniform, but respect a person, build the relationship with a person. I advocate for you if I know you as a person. I'm not gonna advocate for you because you have a title or a position. We gotta stop respecting titles and positions so much if it's not bearing any fruit. So you got too many people in law enforcement.
How would you go about doing it? How would you go about doing it?
We have to implement these programs and enforce what we already have on the books, which we already have in relationships with the cops and coffee, cops, and we already have these relationships. We just gotta develop them more.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kinsler. And Mr. Dennis, do you support defunding the police to finance social programs that reduce recidivism? Or do you believe that programs could be strengthened without impeding on law enforcement?
There's a better word on funding. Yes, I would reallocate funding from the police department, because what we've looked at is, in the process of what's happening, those light armor vehicles that they bought coming out of the Gulf War are not necessary. They're not even being used. So when we're talking about strengthening programs and taking money from the law enforcement community, yes. A lot of things that's happening in the community, what once was that we had programs like Team Clean, those programs from back in the days that could go to the streets and you would employ people through the youth program for the summers. So yes, I would take money from the law enforcement, not defund police as a word to say, but allocate funding into programs and creating more programs and partnerships with the law enforcement community.
Thank you. And how do you? I'll go to you, Mr. Hardiman.
So in the city of Miami, I've been very instrumental in providing what we call the anti-poverty grant. And what you should know about that is that it came about from the discussion of wanting to add more police officers to our community. And I believe that was the city of Miami's response.
Mr. Dennis, if you could put down your microphone. Sorry. Thank you.
the city of Miami believed that if you added more police to our community, that it was going to be safer. And I disagree with that. I believe that we need to add more resources for the community. And that's how we end up getting this $2.25 million recurring each year for the anti-poverty dollars that we can use to train people in our community, to provide them jobs, to get them access to a number of different things that give them a way up. And so my point in that is that I didn't take that from the police department. I took it from the budget. I mean, you don't have to take anything from the police department whose responsibility is to keep our community safe and give it to anyone else. You can take it from a number of different places. You can take it from newly discovered resources. You can take it from the increase in the property values. So there's many places that you can take without taking it from the police. And what we should understand about the police department and our relationship as Black people in this county is that in 2025, there's going to be an elected sheriff in Miami-Dade County. And so no longer will it be on the city manager or the mayor to make that appointment. This is going to be where we have an opportunity to actually get behind a person that shares our beliefs about our community and get them elected to that office. And if we can do that and help them develop their team, then we can have a beautiful relationship with our police department. But we have to take responsibility for who comes to that office.
Thank you. And Ms. Matilis, do you agree or disagree with what Mr. Hardiman and Mr. Dennis has said? And they both said pretty much the same thing, but with a difference. Because
I just want to remind us that this talk of defunding police or reforming police just reminds me, what comes to my mind is that somebody would ask us to reform enslavement, right? So none of us would agree with embarking on a process to reform an institution that represses us, that brutalizes us, that criminalizes us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But so that is what we have to keep in mind in terms of figuring out the best ways to proceed. Because if we're not going to achieve this reform, this drastic reform that so many advocates are calling for, I know that we've got to do some things to restore the police creed to protect and serve, right? So if it's important for us to have community policing, if it's important to have police officers who represent and reflect the diversity of our community, then that is something that we have to get behind. We've got to make the obvious explicit in that sense. You say you want more police officers who are diverse, then that's what we've got to commit to doing. We say we want accountability and transparency, then we've got to put in place measures, instruments, opportunities to do that. And the CIP is one of those wonderful opportunities, right? But then beyond that, police officers, regardless of who they are, I think need to continue to go through a lot of training. And so we would need to really define the kind of robust training that we want to see all of our officers undergo, such that they're keeping their implicit bias in check, they're keeping their insensitivities in check, they're keeping their prejudices in check, right? And we're checking
your position, Ms. Matilis, is that you would agree with the defunding of the pound?
I'm sort of not exactly for defunding police because I recognize that that's an institution we need.
We just wanted to know.
But I recognize I recognize that the calls for reforming or defunding police is a battle cry from our communities saying that we have had enough of these institutions that don't protect us, that don't serve us, that brutalizes us. I think that that's what we need to focus in on and figure out how to bring people around to creating the kind of police force or police institution that we want to see.
Thank you, Ms. Matilis. This question now it's yes or no. I'm going to go and I'm going to ask each one of you and yes or no.
You can ask me about defunding the police.
Oh, and I stopped asking everybody the same question, but if you just got something that you want to add to that, by all means, Ms. Kinsler, I want you to answer that.
I would not agree with it unless you had plans. I think that you shouldn't make everybody suffer because of a few rotten apples when it comes to their income. Now, I think you should have fines and oppose fines and have some policies that will penalize the particular people that's in question or the department, not the entire police department.
I understand. Thank you so much, and thank you for that. So this question, and I'm going to start with Ms. Matilis. Yes or no? Do you support an independent civilian panel being created and codified in the Home Rule Charter?
Absolutely.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
Mr. Dennis? And I take that to be a yes because your microphone is off. Okay. Mr. Hardiman?
Yes.
Ms. McGee? Thank you, Mr. Hardiman.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. McGee. Ms. Kinsler?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
Okay, now I have a question that's come in from one of the members of the community, Mr. Harold Hinton, and he's posing this to everyone on the panel. What would be your solution to eliminating the continued prostitution in the Brownsville area? Ms. Matilis?
Enforcement, right? Making sure that the demand isn't generating the supply, right? And so that's a tough call, but you have to really put some people away if they're engaging in this kind of activity.
So what do you mean that the demand is not supporting the supply? What does that mean?
If there are people seeking prostitutes, then prostitutes will be available. And so the enforcement has to be on both sides.
So you're saying that the police should be arresting the Johns as well?
I think that the Johns ought to be handled properly. And I also think that the women, because sometimes prostitution, is a symptom of so many different things. And so I'm not for arresting the women per se, but I am for making sure that they get the support they need. Because for all we know, these women are being trafficked.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Kinsler?
If you raise the quality of jobs, if you help enhance the community, if you add the resources we need for this district and for Brownsville, you would have, there's a term called survival sex. It happens most of the time only because you need to pay your bills. So you cannot penalize the women if that's the way to survive. You can't tell me to stop stripping or stop trapping, and that's the only way I have an income of. So we have to do better.
Thank you. Mr. Dennis?
When the dope goes,
I'm so sorry. I didn't get you.
I said when the dope goes, the prostitute goes. When you let those prostitutes, they are drug addicts. So you will have to go inside that community and start infiltrating and find out where the drugs are at. Me personally, I would sit a police car in that area, rotated frequently and heavily. Because what that would then do, if you can't make no money there, you have to go somewhere else. And that's not what's happening. It has to be an enforcement process. So I would eliminating the drugs, getting drug dealers out of there, eliminates the prostitutes and the Johns that coming to pay for their services.
Mr. Hardiman?
First thing I'll tell you is that prostitution exists in every neighborhood. It's not just in places like Brownsville. And so when I was a public defender, for instance, most of my prostitutes came from Miami Beach, and they were in very well-known hotels. And so the difference between Miami Beach and Brownsville is that Miami Beach is developed. It has a base of taxes, and it's not something that you see that stands out. Whereas in the Brownsville area, because we have underdeveloped spaces, because we have dilapidated areas, because we have the lack of investment and beautification in those spaces, then the one thing that you see are prostitutes who readily identify themselves standing out there. And so what we need to do is provide more economic development and beautification of the area, certainly help crack down on any sort of human sales that's going on, but then also ensure that that the areas are well lit and that there's police presence there. You have to go a step further and do what my mother did when she was a police officer, which is engage in stings, which discourages people from coming to those specific areas to buy sex with women or men.
Ms. McGee?
the social worker in me and the solution oriented person really is looking at what are the challenges that are bringing this type of institution to the Brownsville community. Yes, we can talk about economic development and we can talk about, but people, we have to talk directly to and find out what is it that we can do in order to change that behavior and make sure that needs are being met and resources are being provided so that we don't have these instances happening right in our neighborhoods. We want to make sure that people have those resources that they need. So sorry, the social worker in me goes to that part first, is wanting to ensure that we understand why the problem is there.
Thank you. Thank you all. And now that's the end of our questions. So at this point, you all, each of you will have 2 minutes to make your closing remarks. And I'll start with how we started. Ms. Kinsler?
Thank you again for allowing us to be able to discuss some of the major issues that we have in our district. I believe if you vote Monista Lee Kinsler, MLK 2020, and you punch 334, you will have change, and the change that we need in our community. If we had this change existing, I would not have to be running. So I appreciate if you punch 334 so that we can have some different results and we do some different things and we enforce the things that we have been promised all these years. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kinsler. Appreciate that. Ms. Metellus?
Thank you so much for the opportunity to engage in very important conversations for the future of our district, the future of our community. Thank you to all those who participated on Facebook. I simply want to say that District 3 needs a champion, right? And I believe that I'm that champion. I'm that champion because I've got a heart for service. I've got a heart for community, right? And I've got a heart for people. And so with Gypsy Metellus, you will have that champion and we'll be moving forward to a new District 3. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. McGee, I should have went to you first, but that's me and my alphabet.
It's quite all right. It's been a long night. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you for moderating and for
Mr.
allowing.
Dennis, turn down your mic. Turn your mic on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry
so much.
about that.
No, that's fine. I was just going to say the opportunity to share some of our thoughts and my thoughts specifically about Brownsville and District 3. The idea that this is a collaborative. I am a coalition builder. I really believe that this work is collective. It's not going to be about me. It is going to be about all of us working together. I think you want a county commissioner who's accountable and looks at the outcomes that we all want to achieve and uses measurable objectives in order to get there. And finally, I want to make sure that we are making transformational change. So we've talked about change a lot, but if we want to move the needle, we've actually got to do some really dramatic and drastic things to make sure that we are taking Miami-Dade County where it needs to be in terms of our quality of life and the things that we want to achieve. So I believe my social work values, again, all of the things that I bring to the table make me the ideal candidate. I will be the person that's going to represent you the most and the hardest, and I will definitely be a voice for those who are voiceless here in District 3.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McGee. Mr. Dennis?
My opponents are running for office, but I'm interviewing for a job. I'm interviewing for a job to represent the people of District 3. God had a chosen people and the people of the Jewish faith. But when Christ died, everybody became inclusive in the faith to be saved. I'm an all-inclusive candidate. I'm here to support the district. I'm here as a uniter of the district, as an employee of the district with my constituents being my boss. I must do what they say do. If I can't do it, then bring them aboard to allow me to accept the challenges. Again, as I said earlier, My name is the first name on the ballot, so you don't have to look down. Don't pick your poison because I'm the cure. Punch 332 for Brian Dennis as your next Miami-Dade County District 3 Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Dennis. Mr. Hardeman.
I truly ask for your support for Miami-Dade County Commissioner District 3. I want you all to join the PBA, the AFL-CIO, Unite Here, SEIU, former Commissioner Barbie Carey Schuler, and your neighbors. When you look around your neighborhood in Brownsville, look at the signs that you see in your yard. You can trust that if your neighbors believe in Keon Hardeman and his ability to bring in economic development and to move your community forward in a way that you can feel proud of, then you should believe that you can trust in that as well. And so I ask for your support. I typically don't say my punch number, but it's a good one this year. I'm asking you to punch 333 for District 3 in Miami-Dade County. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to turn it back over to you. It's been my pleasure to host this. Thank you all for coming out and candidly speaking with the community and for the community on Facebook and everywhere else. Thank you for joining in.
Thank you, Ms. Peabody Laverty. You did an outstanding job. Thank you to all the candidates, again, for taking a few hours out of your very busy schedules. I know you guys have 12, 16-hour days now going into August. Thank you so much for caring enough about Brownsville to come over here and have a discussion just with us, man. We love every last one of you. We wish each of you the very best in your endeavor in this campaign. I want to just have a state representative and our hero here in Brownsville. This is Bush country. James Bush III to say a few words. He's our Michael Jordan, a 7-time champion. Mr. Bush and our first vice president, could you just give us a few words to close this out? Unmute.
Okay. All right. First of all, could you hear me now?
Yes. Now,
okay. First of all, let's give our host a Brownsville round of applause. I want y'all to do that. Help me give her a round of applause. Let me see your hands. Now,
you're too kind. You're too kind. Thank you.
No, superb job tonight. That's why we chose you because we knew that you could take care of business. And I think each and every presenter tonight, every candidate, I mean, a superb group. Everyone was very respectful to each other, and you handled yourself real well. All I can say, we thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership in Brownsville. Those of us who've been living out here for a long time, and we have been working in this community to provide leadership. We heard a whole lot of great things coming from you, from economic development. We talk law enforcement. Certainly we have our hands full out here. I do a lot of eulogies of young men getting killed, and you just name it. But the work goes on, and we can't get weary in well doing. So I want to just thank each of you for coming. My remarks are going to be very brief because on tomorrow we're going to have our mayoral candidates. You probably have seen the flyer that went out by our president, and I think only 2 persons are on there, big candidates are on there because they didn't get back with you at a certain time. But however, I believe all of them going to be participating. So with that being said, all we want you to do, whoever by God's permission gets this position, because it will only be by his permission that you will serve in this seat. Because if it's for you, you'll get it. But all we want you to know, and we talked about the graveyard, and we talked about a whole lot of other issues. We have a whole lot of other issues, and we have a excellent research team. I wanna let y'all in on a little secret. Those who want to represent us, we have an excellent research team that we do our research, and we want to be heard. We want to be respected, and we want to let you know we'll be coming to the county commission during budget time, and we are going to be looking closely at the monies that's allocated from the federal, be it grants or from the state, And if they are designated for our area, we expect for the leader in this position to make sure that those dollars are provided for our community. We're no longer gonna sit by. And we appreciate the feeding, we appreciate turkeys on Thanksgiving, we appreciate the toys and all that. That's a part of leadership. But that is just a small portion of where we are, because we are faced with some issues that we'll bring to your attention at a later date. We have been taxed since 1955 on our lighting district. We have a special tax here in Brownsville that we have been charged as homeowners, and we won't get into that, but we'll let you know that there's many, many more issues that we are faced with out here, and we expect for the person who gets this position just to be respectful to us, because we will be showing up down at the county commission for budgetary time, and we expect to get our share of the budget. And with that being said, thank you so much for coming, for tuning in tonight. I like how this have gone, Mr. President. I like how we have a very fine group of elected officials. And I believe every one of them care about not only Brownsville, but care about being public servants. And with that being said, let's turn it back over to you, and we'll look forward, Madam Host, for tomorrow night, because you were tough tonight. So the mayor or candidates better get ready. And so with that being said, Mr. President, it's back in your hand.
Thank you, Mr. First Vice. And we will go ahead and conclude this forum at this time. I want to thank all of you again. I thank the members of the Brownsville Civic Neighborhood Association, members of the at-large community who view by Facebook, and for the members who were also Zoom members watching and listening to our Zoom app.
Mr. President, I will be remiss if I did not say that we have lost a warrior in our community who have helped us over the years, not only in Brownsville. She was responsible for the Brownsville Renaissance shopping mall. And I had the privilege of bringing Commissioner Holloman, bringing all of the money people along with DECO in my legislative office to start putting that Brownsville shopping mall with DECO. And that is none other than Miss Lily Williams. We'll be funeralizing her on Friday. And she's passed on, and we ask for your prayers for her family. And so had she been living and healthy, Commissioner, she would be down there doing budgetary time for a community action agency for the Head Start children. And she always would tell the mayor and tell the commissioners, if you mess with my money, I'll be at your doorstep in the morning. So we want to honor Miss Lily Williams and all of her works and efforts over the years. And with that being said, thank you, Mr. President, for this opportunity.
All right, thank you, Representative Bush. And again, to Ms. Peabody LaBerry, thank you so much for your services tonight. Look forward to tomorrow's mayoral forum. Same time, 7 p.m. There'll be a different link for those who want to participate by Zoom. Make sure you reach out to me if you're on Facebook. Send me a message through the CNA Brownsville Civic Neighborhood Association page. Members, please check the email. Make sure I have that contact information so that you can get the link to participate by Zoom. So if there's nothing further, again, thank you guys for participating. Thanks again, everyone who viewed by Facebook and by Zoom.
All the best.
All right. Thank you.